Let's take a look at collective bargaining. It is a process whereby employers and employee representatives negotiate agreements by which terms and conditions of employment are set and are determined for groups of represented employees. Employees who are represented through a particular union or groups of unions, they put forth their requirements, their suggestions, and it is discussed and it is bargained, and finally it is agreed upon by both the parties. No, there are two types of agreements: substantive agreements, which in general agree upon the standard conditions of work, the pay, the benefits in general. And second is the procedural agreements on how disputes and grievances needs to be handled at an organizational level, or involving different employers. So it lays down the procedures. And when it comes to a workforce agreement, it allows employers to fix working time arrangements with workers who do not have collectively agreed terms and conditions. This is another form wherein, when somebody is not represented by a trade union, you have workforce agreement wherein you set the rules and regulations for those particular kind of workers who are not represented. Moving on. Now, what are the different levels in collective bargaining? Depending on the significance and the magnitude of the issues, there is the national level, representatives of employers for the industry or sector, and national trade union officials. Now, this takes a significant look is because the magnitude of the problem is huge and the impact is very wide. So you have representative employers from the industry or the sector, and you have national level officials of the particular trade union discussing the issues. Other approach is to have a company level, wherein representatives of management and the union or staff associations, they get together and solve the issues. Or at the domestic level, on the plant level, you have issues sorted out between the management and your floor representatives and your local shop stewards. Now, what is single table bargaining? It describes a situation in which all the terms and conditions of the represented workers employed by an establishment are determined in a single set of negotiations. All the issues, all the rules and regulations which are to govern the employees, the benefits which are to be provided, all this is put in a single plate, and this is a single table bargaining. Negotiations are done on the basis of all these conditions. Now, what is disclosure of information? When should an employer go for disclosure? When it is sought by a trade union official. Now, if it relates to his undertaking, employer has to provide information if it pertains to his undertaking or a related business matter, if it is in his possession. So if the information is in a particular employer's possession or his authorized representative possession, it needs to be supplied if it is relevant to the subject matter. It is in accordance with good practice. Does good practice allow you to share? If it is so, you need to share the information with the trade union official. Lack of information would impede the representative and collective bargaining. Will this information stop the representative of the union in putting forth his argument during the collective bargaining process? If it's so, that information should be provided. Now, employer has no obligation to provide in the following scenarios if the information is given in confidence and it cannot be disclosed. And information is relating to particular individuals which does not have any impact on a group of individuals or any particular team or department, so that the scope for involvement and intervention of the trade union does not arise. It would cause injury to the undertaking. If it will cause substantive damage to the undertaking, it need not be disclosed. Information protected by statutes, those particular category of information which are not to be revealed as per the directions of any particular statute, need not be divulged or disclosed by the employer. What are the different attitudes towards collective bargaining? First off, it started with the marketing theory, wherein it was viewed as a demand and supply dispute, wherein you need to bargain for better supply of labor. Then it went to the governmental theory, wherein it was thought this is the way forward to have collective bargaining and settle disputes. This is a control method. And managerial theory says that it's a win-win approach, wherein people need to sit and discuss, the employers and the workforce need to discuss the areas for mutual cooperation. And these are the three different attitudes towards collective bargaining which has evolved over the time period. Now, what is negotiation? What is the purpose of negotiation? First is the purposeful persuasion, in which one party persuades the other to agree upon their suggested standards and solutions. And second is a constructive compromise, wherein both the parties try to arrive at a common ground by compromising on certain aspects of their demands and agreeing to the demands of the other party so that they strike a balance. What are the approaches to negotiation? Distributive bargaining is again a win-lose approach wherein one party gains and the other party loses. There are finite resources involved. So for example, if you need to give a hike of 5%, that needs to be cut short from your training budget or any other area wherein you can accommodate this 5% increase in the incentives or your wages. So because there is a finite resource and you need to adjust it, it's a win-lose approach. Integrative bargaining something is again win-win approach wherein both the parties compromise based on understanding of the finer aspects of each point of negotiation. This integrative bargaining approach is applied when you have proper understanding of the dimensions of all the factors involved in a particular dispute so as to arrive at a solution which satisfies both the sides. Now, how do you prepare a negotiation and negotiating strategy? Now, you have to set the objectives, parameters and priorities of the negotiation in clear manner. It should be in writing and you need to understand, you need to have a complete understanding of the whole picture. Research the background, understand what led to this particular situation, what was the background, recognize potential for conflict. What if this negotiation goes wrong? What will be the implication? You need to understand the potential for conflict and what will be the areas wherein your opponent party will disagree. You have to identify tradable items and bargaining power. What is that you can bargain? Where are the areas or which are the areas in which you can have the upper hand? What is that the other party will value? And what are the items that you can trade? Determine negotiating strategy. How is that you're going to? Is it going to be hardball approach wherein you go all out and deny everything, or is it going to be a soft approach? So you have to determine the negotiating strategy. Determine the agenda. You have to clearly set the agenda. If it's done, if the negotiation is done in different stages, you need to arrive at an agenda. What needs to be done? You cannot deal with all the issues at one. You have to break it down to chunks and deal with significant issues so that you can bring about effective solutions. Issue prior information to all the stakeholders and the parties involved so that there is no administrative delay. Select participants, who is going to represent from the employer side and who is going to represent from the trade union. So it needs to be identified. Both parties need to put forth people who are assertive, who can communicate, who can definitely understand what is being spoken about and can bring about effective solutions. You need confident people in the negotiation table. Now, how is an actual negotiation conducted? With an opening presentation, the topic is set, the minimum idea of how this is to be done, what are the procedures involved, what is the topic all about. Through an opening presentation, it is established. Now, fact finding is done. What are the facts involved on both the sides? What is the issue? It needs to be established. Identifying common ground where the parties agree. So, what are the areas which need not be debated and discussed so that you can move on with the other issues. Use of the negotiating strategy and bargaining power. Whatever strategy was formulated and what are the aces up your sleeve, you need to bring it forth and you have to apply those strategies and use your bargaining power and making concessions wherein if you hit upon a patch where you think you will achieve, you have to give some concession to the opponent party so that a solution is agreed upon. Now, finally, after you have discussed and arrived at a strategy, how do you formalize this? What are the contents in a draft agreement? It should contain who made the agreement and on what date, because this achieves a significance in the form. When you analyze it on a later date, it has legality. So you need to understand who made the agreement and on what date, who is to be covered by the agreement, who are the parties involved, what was the dispute, what were the different terms and conditions, and what was finally agreed upon, when the agreement is to take effect. So what date will this agreement take effect, clauses of the agreement, what was discussed, what were the clauses discussed, what are the areas which were discussed, and a strategy is put in place to overcome the problems. So you need to put those specific clauses in the agreement. Finally, how disagreements and appeals arising from this particular agreement will be dealt. So on the whole, we have taken a look at how industrial relation processes work, how disputes are resolved, and what are the different types of negotiation strategies, and what is the power of the trade unions in the industrial relations context. Thank you.